Are you tired of the secular news? Do you want a Christian view of politics? Do you want to know what is going on in your Christian community? Your wait is over. Welcome to the InterMountain Christian News Hour. Here is your host, Dr. Anthony Harper.
I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here with the InterMountain Christian News Hour, and outreach of the InterMountain Christian newspaper, which we invite people to take a look at our website, imcnews.org, and click on that support or donate link that you'll see there so you can download our newspaper. And if you'd like to get involved with helping us get a Christian newspaper out in more places, this is a Christian News voice, your voice, to be able to share your testimony and other news items. We have an exciting a guest here with us, Mr. Wayne Root, who was President Obama's classmate back at Columbia University. Are you there, Mr. Root?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Root.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
All right, I hear you. I'm on with Anthony and Alan, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, you're on with Wayne Root. Nice to meet you.
Hey, well, we're on with each other now.
Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Yeah,
right.
And thanks for joining us here today. So, the number one concern for a lot of people is about America and where we're headed, and that all that secrecy that's surrounding President Obama. I was going to first curious if you'd heard about the movie 2016, the movie.
Yes, of course I have. Yes.
Okay, and that debuts in our area here this weekend.
Right.
So, have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard a lot about it.
Okay. So, Mr. Root, could you share with our listeners about how you came to know President Obama, or he wasn't president back then, but what led up to Columbia University and...
Yeah, well, you're assuming I came to know him. Nobody at Columbia came to know him. I mean, that's the whole problem, is he was the ghost of Columbia University. Yeah, he says he went there and he graduated there, and the university says he went there and graduated there, so I'm assuming that he did. But all I could tell you is, my only honest answer to you is, I graduated class of 83, Columbia University, just as he did. I was political science major, just as he did. I was pre-law, just as he was. Never met him, never saw him, never heard of him. Don't know anyone at Columbia who's ever met him, saw him, or heard of him.
Oh, could this be why those records are blocked?
Well, everybody's guessing. Here's how this all came about. Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, started throwing around all kinds of lies and suggestions made up out of thin air about Mitt Romney, and said he hasn't paid his taxes, he hasn't paid taxes in 10 years, he's hiding something. So I thought it's time for me, I'm now able to bring out what I've thought for 4 years, which is that Barack Obama is the one who's hiding something. And in life, by the way, usually when you attack someone, look in the mirror, you're really talking about the issue that bothers you. Obama is hiding something, so he attacks Mitt Romney for hiding something to distract us from looking at what Obama's hiding. And so I came out with this theory, and that's all it is, a theory, because his records are sealed. There's no way of knowing if the theory's correct, but an awful lot of people have heard my theory and think that I've hit, the nail on the head here. And that is that, the reason his records are sealed is either that there's some sort of problem at Columbia University, or he's just embarrassed at very bad grades, or all of the above, or that he went to Columbia University as a foreign national student. And that would be what got him into Columbia. Well, he had very bad grades at Occidental. That would be what got him into Harvard Law School. He had very bad grades at Columbia. It kind of explains everything and all the problems. Because if his grades were good and there was no other problem, why would he seal his records? He'd show everybody his records. But his grades, weren't good, and therefore he had no right to get into those schools, and therefore he had to get in through a back channel and a fast track. And that fast track, my guess is, was being a foreign exchange student or a foreign national student from Indonesia. That allowed him to get in because all these colleges want to claim diversity and say they have students from 170 countries. And he's probably the only Indonesian in the whole world that was applying to Columbia University. I believe that was the Obama scandal.
It has to be that these kinds of things, and that whole theory is what we heard a lot when there was all the talk about the birth certificate, and people were saying that, he really has one, but he's just not showing it on purpose just to make an issue out of it. And I'm sorry, I thought that was a very lame theory out there, because, and I was explaining to someone, if that is true, that he was not showing it on purpose, not hiding something, then I don't want him in that position for that reason either, because that shows the lack of character and a deceiver.
He spent millions of dollars, keeping people from prying into his records. Not just the birth certificate, but his his ID, his Social Security number, which appears to be from Connecticut when he's never been in Connecticut in his life. His selective service number and what happened with that, and of course his college records. They're all sealed. So my argument was that Mitt Romney ought to say publicly to Barack Obama, "Hey, I have no problem releasing another 10 years of tax returns as long as you unseal and release all of your sealed documents of your life." Because there's a lot of people out there with a lot of questions. That's all I said. I'm not a birther. You can't use those words to describe me. I'm a businessman. I'm a successful businessman. I'm a self-made millionaire. I'm a guy who has written probably 500 articles, commentaries in the last year at the biggest conservative websites in all of America, and 499 of the 500 were about the fact that Obama is a failed economic president, and I talk about capitalism and economics and taxes and spending, and Obama's failed on every one of those levels. This is the first time I've ever touched an issue outside of economics. I don't know how anyone can ever call me a birther. I'm not. What I am is a guy merely asking questions about the guy occupying the White House whose finger's on the nuclear button.
Mr. Root, also our listeners are concerned about his lack of sensitivity to Christian concerns, having Ramadan, a special event in the White House, but any special Easter event, I don't think so. And our listeners are concerned about his lack of connection to the Christian community, claiming to be Christian but not supporting our values. And I was recently at the White House to try to ask President Obama a question. And WorldNet Daily did a report about the topic is, what about prayer, Mr. President? I actually only got to ask the Secretary of Agriculture that President Obama's press secretary allowed me to do. I brought up prayer, and it really stunned the news reporters there. And had you heard about that experience at the White House?
I hadn't heard about your particular experience. I certainly understand the Christian community's reticence to understand why Obama is so unfriendly to Christians in general. I happen to be a Jew turned born-again Christian. A Jew who married into a very prominent family of Christian ministers and missionaries all over the world. My wife's uncle was the bishop of the Free Methodist Church of the United States of America. Her cousin is the founder and the CEO, I guess you'd call her. She runs a Christian orphanage in Burundi, Africa, that takes care of thousands of orphans. And her sister, my sister-in-law, and her husband run Foursquare Churches, missionary outreach all over the Caribbean. So, I understand all of the problems, understanding why this man is so unfriendly to Christians when he claims to be a Christian. Believe me, I understand. As a born a Jew, I understand how unfriendly he's been to Israel, even though he says he's Israel's best friend. His actions never match his words.
Never.
When I was there, Mr. Root, in Washington recently on July 18th, also at the Christians United for Israel conference, and Prime Minister Netanyahu was speaking to our group along with Senator Lieberman and Michelle Bachmann, Congressman Bachmann. But anyway, my concern is, the lack of support for Israel as well. And I'm headed back there in October. I don't know if you've heard, there's a special prayer event organized by the National Day of Prayer.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and it's called The Summons, and I plan to go to those White House press conferences, and hopefully President Obama will call upon me, and I'll be able to include the scripture, 2 Chronicles 7:14, and my question to President Obama. But it does seem like there's no openness to discuss these concerns. Even I've been turned down. I'm sure it's common to be turned down for private interviews with President Obama, but I think that he's afraid to deal with our Christian concerns. So,
well, listen, no one should be surprised. His Christianity, quote unquote, was kind of molded in the pews of Reverend Jeremiah Wright's church for 20 years. You heard Jeremiah Wright screaming and screeching against Jews, against Israel, against the United States of America.
Oh no, he never heard that. Remember?
Yeah, he wasn't there on those specific days, I guess. Right? Those 2 or 3 times that he ever said something bad about America or Israel, but in reality he said something bad every week, and Obama was in those pews. But hey, listen, here's the important thing. I think a lot of people out there just need to understand that Obama is the worst economic president in American history. He's killed jobs. He will continue to kill jobs. If he's reelected, I fear that America and capitalism will not exist within a couple of years. And I'm talking as a businessman who speaks to so many hundreds, if not well over 1,000 other business people, all of us scared to death that we will not survive beyond the November election if Obama is reelected. That's all America needs to know. It doesn't matter if you're a businessman or woman. It only matters if you work for someone who's a businessman or woman. There won't be jobs for any of you. And that's the problem, is business is just in major trouble on Main Street, and we all of us agree that it's because of the policies of Barack Obama. I'm not sure what else you could say that would convince people. I have predicted and still predict that there will be a landslide. I predict this will be like a Reagan-Carter landslide in favor of Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. But all of us are worried, what if I'm wrong? Nobody's right 100% of the time. What if my prediction's wrong? What if, in reality, Obama is a winner because so many people out there are disconnected from the reality of what's happening with the economy? They're getting government checks. They're getting welfare. They're getting food stamps. They're getting free breakfast and lunch at school. They depend on government, and they have no clue how bad the economy is because they don't own a business. So, that's the worry. That's the concern. And I think that, as a guy who's not an exaggerator, not a conspiracy theorist, as a self-made millionaire businessman, as a former vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party with some credibility, I can only tell you I'm not exaggerating when I say I fear that the United States of America will no longer exist within a couple of years of Obama's reelection.
And that's what this movie 2016 is supposed to be all about.
Right. I mean, his whole life, 2016 will tell you, his whole life has been raised around communists and Marxists and socialists. And I didn't need to know about Bill Ayers or Frank Marshall or the long list Obama's been around, Saul Alinsky. I didn't need to know about any of them. I only knew that he was my classmate at Columbia University, or so he says. And pretty much everyone I went to Columbia with, I was the token conservative at Columbia University out of a class of 700.
Wow.
I don't think there was another one. There certainly wasn't any I knew about. And they were really not liberal. They were not progressive. They were communist, Marxist, and socialist. That's how bad Columbia University's student body was when I went there in '83. So I knew when someone said one of your classmates is running for president, I said, we've got a very big problem.
Well, didn't he go by a different name?
Well, yeah. I mean, no one's quite sure, guys. I mean, no one's sure if it was Barack Obama or Barry Soetoro. I know at various points his mother married a new gentleman, Mr. Soetoro, who was Indonesian, and Barry Obama moved to Indonesia and went to school in Indonesia. And there's no way to go to public schools in Indonesia, no way, without becoming an Indonesian citizen and renouncing your American citizenship. They won't allow dual citizenship, so they don't recognize American citizenship. So Barack Obama came back from Indonesia with a new name. He went from Barack Obama to Barry Soetoro because he was legally adopted by his new stepdad. And so that's where I believe he attended Columbia University and Occidental and Harvard as an Indonesian foreign student, because he had the access by going to Indonesia as a young boy and going to school there and changing his citizenship.
There's another movie out. Have you heard about Agenda?
I don't know Agenda.
It's even more profound, I think, than 2016 movie is going to be. But AgendaDocumentary.com, the movie producer is an ex-Idaho legislator, and that's Curtis Bowers.
Yeah.
So you could check that out, because I think it's even more shocking than this Obama 2016 movie will be. But they talk about in the movie about the history of communism in America, socialism. So,
well, you don't need to be shocked by a movie. You just need to be living as a business owner in today's economy. Mm-hmm. That's shocking enough. It's 42 straight months of over 8% unemployment. The real unemployment is 15 to 20% if you measured it the way it was measured in 1929 and decades past. The real unemployment is actually higher than in 10 of the 12 years of the Great Depression. Real estate has collapsed to a level worse than at the peak of the Great Depression. Male unemployment in this country, or I should say male employment participation is the word they use, the amount of men actually working, is at a lowest level since 1948. So the numbers tell the story. We are in a Great Depression. I call it the Obama Great Depression, and that's shocking enough. You don't need to be shocked by a movie. You just need to be living in this economy.
It is really scary. And so what do you think about Paul Ryan in general?
In general, good. Remember, I'm a libertarian. I really believe in cutting spending, and Paul Ryan's about the best the Republican Party has, and that's a compliment. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But even the best isn't enough. The fact is, even Fox News told the truth yesterday, and they're always leaning right, and that's good. I like Fox News. I'm on it all the time, and I write for them on their website, and I appear on them all the time. But Fox News was trying to be helpful to Paul Ryan. They were saying that Democrats try and say he's cutting the budget too much, he wants to cut spending too much, he wants to cut Medicare, and they were defending him by saying, he really doesn't want to cut it that much because even his budget that Democrats are complaining about and screaming that it's too radical raises spending. Well, I could have told them that. They're using it to defend him against Democratic charges of going too far, but I would use it, kind of to say, wait a minute, I like Paul Ryan. He's probably the best we've got in Congress, other than maybe Ron Paul. But having said that, even his budget plan raises debt and spending. So, I mean, it's kind of scary that the only choices we have out there, choice number one is, just completely bankrupt the country with Barack Obama and add to the debt and add to the spending to solve the problem of too much debt and too much spending, or go with the Republican team, which is add to the debt and add to the spending a little bit less. Either way, you're headed for the cliff. One's headed for the cliff at 180 miles an hour, and the other's headed for the cliff at 120 miles an hour, but you're still headed for a cliff. Now, I'd prefer 120. At least I get to live an extra year or two.
Yeah.
And who knows what might happen during those 2 years. Maybe we could turn it around. But, I wish Paul Ryan would go further. I wish Mitt Romney would go further. I wish they would actually dramatically cut spending.
Now, do you know either one of these gentlemen?
I've met Mitt. He's, as I'm talking to you, I'm in my office, my home office, and on my wall are quite a few photos of me with Mitt Romney. He's not a friend of mine, but I've met him at quite a few Republican fundraisers and Republican events. I was a lifelong Republican until just a few years ago, and a pretty big contributor to the Republican Party. So I've met Mitt at quite a few times in my life. I have not had the pleasure of meeting Paul Ryan, but I think he's the brightest mind in all of politics. I think the choice was a bad one from the standpoint that I would have rather seen Marco Rubio, because I believe that you've got to get Hispanic votes to win the election. But I think it was a good one from the standpoint, if you weren't going to pick Marco Rubio, this is the brightest young mind in all of politics, not just conservative, who can debate one-on-one with a Biden or an Obama or a Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, and rip them to shreds. I've seen him do it. He is a bright guy who knows every line of the budget, and he makes Obama look like he's standing still in a debate. Obama is unmasked as the phony and the fraud that he is with fraudulent math by a bright whiz kid who knows his math like Paul Ryan. So that's the good news. I still would have preferred Marco Rubio.
I would have too.
But having said that, he turns out to be give it a little time to think about it, and I realized he's a pretty darn good pick.
We want to encourage our listeners to stay tuned because, Mr. Root, we're going to go to a commercial break just briefly here. But what is your website for people to learn more about you?
I love it.
It is root4america.com. That's root, ROOT, 4america.com.
Yeah, check that out. And stay tuned. We'll be back here just in a few minutes, and check out our website, imcnews.org, and appreciate your prayers for our nation. And we'll be back here in a few minutes.
We read news every day. News that's informative, but rarely encouraging. The InterMountain Christian newspaper aims to change that. They present the news you need to know, from what's going on in your community to your world, with encouraging words, motivation, and the resources you need to make positive changes in your life. What is your local government doing that you need to know about? What's happening in your community you need to be a part of? Whether it's a story from your neighborhood, a national story, or an encouraging word, you'll find biblical issues of everyday life in the InterMountain Christian newspaper. InterMountain Christian News is produced and supported by the work and donations of individuals and churches. You'll find it at churches, Christian bookstores, and online at imcnews.org. To find out more about supporting this local resource, go online at imcnews.org or call InterMountain Christian News in Boise, Idaho at 208-703-8688. The InterMountain Christian News, a voice sharing the truth on matters dear to people's hearts.
Living Waters Ranch, located in Challis, Idaho, serves the body of Christ, offering a unique haven apart from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Small groups of church personnel can enjoy a planning retreat, and large groups will find plenty of activities for all ages. For more information about Living Waters Ranch, check out their website at www.livingwatersranch.org or call their office at 208-879-2729. That's 208-879-2729.
Well, back again, Mr. Root, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Yeah, I have a concern, for our listeners that believe the importance of prayer. The National Day of Prayer people, a lot of these prayer groups converging in Washington, D.C. is that I'm wondering if Fox News is afraid to talk about the issue of prayer and what prayer is.
Well, I think all media are a little bit afraid. I think I saw something the other day that I thought was really compelling and really blow away. It was showing a kid in school, and it said, prayer is banned here, and reading the Bible is banned here. And then it showed the same kid in a prison uniform in prison. It said prayer is encouraged here, after they've already gotten in trouble and killed somebody. And I thought that was pretty prophetic and pathetic as well. So, listen, we live in a world that could use a few more prayers at this point, and prayer can never hurt. That's the best thing I can say.
Well, but specifically, I had mentioned in this World Net Daily report that only the prayers of the righteous are being heard, and that would offend a lot of people. But the reality from a biblical perspective is that only those that honor the Son are heard, that respect Christ. And a lot of people don't respect Christ. And it's really sad that our nation has left its Christian heritage, and I'm sure you share with our listeners that got concerned that we need to return back to the Bible. It is the principle. It is the only Word of God. And but these views are not popular in the media, and a lot of people, as you said, they're nervous about this. And there was a shocked look on those news reporters' faces just mentioning the two words prayer and fasting in that conference. So.
Well, here's all you have to know about the news media, gentlemen. Here's the only thing you have to know. When I was a student at Columbia University in 1981, that was when President Reagan was assassinated. Well, I say assassinated. Assassination attempt. He was shot. And a kid ran into our classroom. I was in the biggest political science class at Columbia University, probably about, I don't know, anywhere from 250 to 350 kids, big class, giant theater in the round, very high ceilings, echoed, and a kid burst through the back door and yells out, "Reagan's been shot, they've assassinated the president." Those are the words he said. Now, most people took assassinated to mean dead. And we were in the midst of our class, so we didn't know any better. We only knew what he told us. Can you guess what the reaction of the class was to that announcement?
Oh, well, if you're talking about there at Columbia, they probably cheered.
Yeah, standing ovation.
Oh, no.
Everybody stood up to clap and scream and say, yeah, they killed that SOB.
Oh, no.
That was the reaction of all the students at Columbia University, except for me. I was the one in the classroom that literally had tears running down his cheeks and had to leave the room. I was sick to my stomach, went in the bathroom and vomited, literally, because A, my hero in life was Ronald Reagan. I loved him. To me, he was like a second father. And B, the thought that he might be dead, and C, the thought that my classmates, who I always assumed were liberal but decent people, were clapping and hugging and yelling like it was New Year's Eve, celebrating the death of a man that I loved, merely because the crime was he was a conservative. I was so sick to my stomach, I had to go vomit. And I still remember it to this day, sitting on the bathroom floor, just crying and saying, oh my God, I can't believe what I just heard. Reagan's dead and they're happy? So it was just a real eye-opener for me. Well, the reason I bring that story up is that you talked about the press being a little bit scared of religion, a lot scared of religion. And I can only give you my experience. Years later, I get Columbia College Magazine. It comes 4 times a year and it tells me how all my classmates are doing, where they've gone in life, what their achievements are. And you would not be surprised to learn most of them are in the media. Yeah. So if I told you that, 30 years ago I was a member of the KKK and I wanted to kill people because of the color of their skin and I wore a white hood, but now I'm not like that anymore and I can do a fair media interview, do you think I'd be allowed to keep my job at a major network? But here's 30 years later, they all rooted 30 years ago for the death of a man because he was a conservative, and that's who your media is.
Yeah.
And you wonder why you can't get a fair shake in the media if you are A, conservative, B, Christian, C, Republican, D, libertarian, whatever the word may be. If you're for smaller government, they hate you, and they're biased. And the same people that once rooted for the death of Reagan, trust me, they haven't changed any more than I would, want to hang out with a guy who wore a white hood and rooted for the death of someone because of the color of their skin 30 years later. Nobody changes that much.
Yeah, I was assuming that Fox News would be more in line with some Christian values, but that was...
Well, I'll tell you what, Fox News is certainly better than any other network, and once we lose Fox News, once that goes, there's nothing left in the media for those of the conservative background.
Right.
But having said that, I did see a study recently. I think 80% of everyone who works at Fox News, and that's from the on-air personalities down to the camera people, 80% are registered Democrats.
Wow.
What
At
did you
Fox
just say?
News. I didn't just misstate, by the way. 80% at Fox News are registered Democrats. So, just because there's a few people on the front of your camera, that you see Sean Hannity say, or Glenn Beck before he left, Neil Cavuto, they may be registered Republicans, or they may be independents, or they could very well be libertarians like me. But most of the people who make the decisions at Fox News, the producers, the executives, all the all the little runaround associate producers, booking agents, they're all Democrats because they're in the media. This is the one place they could find a job. Maybe they applied at CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and Fox. And Fox want to hire them.
Excuse me, Mr. Root. We got to go up to the air right now, but invite people to check out your website, rootforamerica.com. And look forward to having you back on the program. Thank you, Mr. Root.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Bless you.
Appreciate it.